Jesus Christ. The zip is open. No shortage of class on this show. What do you want? Huh? You want some screwball Sega Genesis top 10 list? I'm not doing that here. We don't do that on this show. What do you want to hear about? Phantasy Star 2? You want to hear about Sonic the Hedgehog? You want to hear about Streets of Rage? You want to hear about Thunder Force? I'm not going to do that here. Listen, somebody's top 10 list for a video game system is interesting from 10 till about 6. And then we all know what's coming next. So we're not doing that here. This is how we're going to work it. I'm going to present you with what I think are the 10 coolest video games for the Sega Genesis. And when I say coolest, I mean games that I've been exposed to. Games that I think are, maybe off the beaten path. Maybe you don't know about them. Maybe you do know about them. But this is Bithead 1000's top 10 Sega Genesis. This is Bithead 1000's top 10 coolest games for the Sega Genesis. And you say to me, well, what does cool mean? What is cool? Well, it's like a Corvette. Is a Corvette cool? No. You know why? Because middle-aged men ruin the Corvette, and retired old men ruin the Corvette. Every time I see a Corvette, I see a guy either combing over it with a California duster, or taking off from a red light, babying the gas pedal as if there's no engine under the hood. What did you spend all this money for? I love it when somebody spends money on a car like that, like a Corvette, or or you buy a nice Shelby Mustang or something like that, and you come off a red light like you're down in Englishtown at the drag strip. I see that, I'm like, get on it! Because that's what it's for. That's what it was built for. Don't pussyfoot around town in a Corvette. Let's see what that bitch can do. But anyway, I'm lost now. I don't even know what we were talking about. Anyway, this is what I feel are the top 10 coolest games for the Sega Genesis. You want to know what's cool? I'll tell you what kind of car is cool. I mean, we can go on and on about this. Classic cars, classic cars are cool, but they got to be done the right way. You can't have a nice paint job on them. God, it burns my fucking ass when I see some of these car shows where they take somebody's bomb of a car and they fix it up. Sometimes the car has a beautiful patina on it. It's a little rusted, it's a little beat up, but it has the original paint, and it has the original steel wheels, and they throw big wheels on it, and they throw this fancy paint job on it. It's like, you know what? This car is a survivor. It's a survivor. Let's say it's from the 50s or 60s. It's been around here all this time the way it is. It's survived. And what gives you the right to alter that? Keep it going. But don't alter that. Anyway, here we go. Number 10. So I can remember as a kid or a young person just craving blood and guts. I used to stay awake on Friday nights and, watch all the horror movies that were on Channel 11. I didn't have cable vision, so we had Channel 11 Friday nights. They would play monster movies and like, Vincent Price movies and stuff like that. Which, by the way, I don't know how Vincent Price was ever like a horror movie guy. To me, I always thought Vincent Price was gay. And for him to be like, he was like a horror movie icon, I never really understood that. There was nothing scary about the man. But, you'd watch like movies like Omega Man and, and you just crave to see like blood and guts. I can remember, and monsters and stuff like that. And I can remember going to the local video store, and that was when the local video store had like a real hardcore horror section. It wasn't like going into Blockbuster Video or Hollywood Video where they'd have like these, just run-of-the-mill horror movies. They had like really, explicit and like really like hardcore horror movies. I mean, you'd look at the back of the box, and sometimes I thought I was going to get in trouble for just being in that section and being a young person in that section. Look at the back of the boxes, you see arms ripped off and stuff like that. And, I never rented them because, quite frankly, I was kind of afraid. But you'd see, like, these movies were almost like snuff films. And, incidentally, speaking about old video game stores, I can remember the old video game store I went to had like a porno room with a door. It had like a private door that you'd walk into. And, funny story about that, I went into Sam Ash to look for a guitar with my friend. And we were looking at all the guitars and whatnot, and this guy came over to help us, one of the employees there. And he pulled down one of the guitars and he plugged it in. And, I mean, he started wailing on this guitar. I mean, he was all over the place on this guitar. And me and my friend were like, wow, he's really good. And a couple weeks later, we're at the video store renting a video game, and we see the porno door come busting open, and it's the guy from Sam Ash playing the guitar. He's got like a stack of pornos in his hand, like this high. And we look at him, and he looks at us, and he does one of these, like, he like immediately looks at the floor. And we always joke around about that. I mean, come on. You want to rent a porno, it's one thing. But a whole stack of them? Well, what are you going to do with a whole stack of pornos? I mean, come on, relax. But anyway, as a kid, you just craved, to see blood and guts. And when the Genesis came out, it was almost like no holds barred. The Nintendo, you never got anything on the Nintendo. The Nintendo was a very sheltered video game system. It was, I guess, more gauged towards children and stuff like that. And the TurboGrafx, I guess because, I don't know, it's Japanese influence. Maybe the blood and guts wasn't really, a staple of that system either, but for some reason, it seemed like the Genesis was the real rule breaker. And I think a lot of games were coming over from personal computer, were being ported from personal computer to the Genesis. So they had more of that kind of adult, kind of blood and guts aspect. And the next game we're going to talk about is the Immortal. Okay? And now here's an isometric action strategy RPG. I know I throw around the word, the phrase role-playing game around a lot, or the title role-playing game, but it kind of was like a role-playing game. And this had monsters and trolls in it, and you'd get into these battles where, I mean, you were this wizard, and you'd get into these fighting battles, and the fighting engine in this game is actually pretty brilliant. It's brutally frustrating at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty exceptional. But I mean, you'd be this wizard and you'd have a knife, and you one of the deaths that stands out in my mind, and I'll show you some of the clips later, is the wizard cuts the troll's face off, and you see like the face land on the floor, and he's sitting there with no face. Or he tapped the troll's head with the top of his staff, and the head would just expand and pop. I mean, blood and guts everywhere. There's one where he'd take his knife and just cut the troll right down the center, and two halves of his body would fall apart, and you'd see all like the organs and everything inside spill out. So I mean, this game, for a kid like me, this was like, this was like heaven on earth. And it was just such a fun game, a very hard game to play. I beat the Immortal, and it took everything I had to beat that game because of the isometric graphics. There would be little items laying on the floor that were very hard to see, and puzzles that you had to piece together. Very, very clever game. Great graphics. And it was like no fooling around. It wasn't Super Mario. It wasn't Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, this was like adult stuff. I mean, this was like serious, And I think that's what was so attractive about that game. The violence, the difficulty of the puzzles and whatnot. It really felt like, and because like it had these wild death scenes, you just wanted to make your way further into the game so you could see more and more of these interesting death scenes. That's what was so gripping about the game. You constantly wanted to see, new death scenes. So it didn't matter if you died, because you saw a great death scene. But it made you want to fight and advance through a very difficult game, just so you could see all this interesting stuff. And that's what makes the Immortal a very, very cool game. All right, let's talk ToeJam and Earl. Okay? ToeJam and Earl was about these two characters, ToeJam and Earl, who were like hip hop rappers. And for back in the day that it came out, I mean, this was like 1991, 92, hip hop virtually in its infancy. It's funny to see this because, I guess hip hop was relatively innocent and maybe a bit corny back then. And ToeJam and Earl is it's such a funny game, man. It's such a funny and creative game about these guys. They're looking for pieces of their spaceship, and you basically have to, travel through these worlds and try to put your spaceship back together so you can fly back home. And what's great about this game is, for every level that you clear, and it's not even set up so there's a beginning and there's an end. It's kind of free roam. Each level is kind of free roaming, but ultimately you're looking for an elevator so you can go up to the next. I'm going to say platform, because that's kind of what it was like. And you take these elevators up, and each platform or level, you could actually fall off the edge, but it was like in outer space. And if you fell off, you could just keep falling down to lower levels. It was like such an interesting thing, the way that game was set up. And there was all sorts of crazy enemies around, like I don't know, like a doctor, like a crazy doctor that would run around with a syringe, and if he stabbed you with it, he would let out like this wild laugh. And the sound effects and the animations in this game are so funny that you just have to see it. You'd get like a can of Coke and drink it, and you'd get the hiccups, and you'd start burping and whatnot. And all that stuff was done so well. And like there'd be like an old lady running around with a vacuum cleaner. It was so random, and the game had such a good sense of humor that it never got boring, because there was always something new. And your weapons that you would find, not even weapons, but items you would find, like springs for your shoes so you could jump around, or a rubber tube that you could put around you so you could go swimming in the water, or go greater distances in the water, or you could plant rose bushes behind you if bees were chasing you. I mean, or throw tomatoes, or make it rain tomatoes. I mean, just a very creative, off-the-wall game that puts a smile on your face. I don't care who you are. It puts a smile on your face, and you got to think to yourself, the creators of this game, the people that made this game, must have been having such a good time. That's all I could think to myself when I played ToeJam and Earl. These guys, they must have been laughing and just like, well, what wacky thing could I come up with next, or program into the game next? And I could picture them all testing it out, sitting around, maybe having a laugh about it. But ToeJam and Earl is a game that you can come by, relatively inexpensive, and it's just a really, really, really cool game. ToeJam and Earl. Woo!
German.
talk about a game with a lot going on. And we're talking about Rings of Power. Now, Rings of Power is a full-on hardcore role-playing game. Set up with like an isometric map. And, you know, you can develop this team of players and whatnot. Wizards, sorcerers, fighters, and all this. Standard RPG fare. But Rings of Power, man, this is one hell of a difficult game. I mean, right from the start, they give you the ability to basically do whatever you want to do. You can go into a shop, you can kill the shop keeper and whatnot, and you can do things in this game that will screw you toward the end of the game. You could do things in the beginning of this game that will completely rupture your path, you know, towards the end of the game. I'm pretty sure you can ruin your path altogether for beating the game early on with the decisions you make. You're a product of the decisions you make in this game. And I mean, right out of the gate, you can get wiped out like this. And I think that's the thing about Rings of Power that maybe a lot of people shy away from or whatnot, is that you have to be very careful and very smart in the beginning of this game. You know, you start out in this kingdom, and you know, right off the bat, these knights approach you. They want money for the king. You don't pay up, boom, you're dead. They take you down. And Rings of Power is another one of those Genesis, those exciting Genesis role-playing games that was so big and so massive. And I can remember when I owned the game back in the early 90s, I'd gotten so far in the game, and then I just kind of, I don't know, I gave up on it, or I moved on to something else. And I never finished the game, but I thought I was far through the game. In my mind, I was halfway through the game. And then for some reason, I can sit there and watch playthroughs on and speed runs on YouTube. I watched a playthrough of Rings of Power, which was like you know, like an 18 and 19. I think it was like a 26-part video, and realized that I got absolutely nowhere in this game. So this is one of these role-playing games where you got to strap in and just like forget about everything else in your life. But the cool thing about Rings of Power is the battle scenes were in this isometric setup, like your two parties battling against each other, and there was animated spells. That's the thing that was really exciting about this game. All the animated spells. You fire a lightning spell, you'd see lightning come down from the sky. You'd see all this interesting stuff. And you'd see your characters battling back and forth. And there was quite a bit of strategy on that battlefield. So, I mean, Rings of Power had, you know, bright, colorful graphics. Sometimes a little difficult to comprehend everything that was going on the screen, because it was so much going on. And that's a game I always wondered if it was ported over from the PC or not. It always seemed like it was, because it was just such an involved role-playing game. And like I say many times, you didn't see many games like this when it came out. It was special. It was really special. But Rings of Power, if you got you know, cast iron balls, and you want yourself a hardcore role-playing game, and you don't mind you know, dying a couple times and powering through it, Rings of Power is a really, really neat game. Really cool game for the Sega Genesis. M1 Abrams. What tickles the testicles more than the idea of a battle tank? I mean, you're talking about an all-terrain vehicle with a cannon mounted on it. I mean, you know, to me, it's the greatest weapon of war ever devised. And, you know, as a boy, I mean, you would dream about, you know, driving a tank. And now here was your opportunity. M1 Abrams battle tank. And I'll tell you what was so special about this game, and I don't think a lot of people really know this, but M1 Abrams was a really groundbreaking game in that you can start a mission and forget about the mission, because I don't think I ever played a mission in the game. It was this free roaming landscape where you can drive a battle tank. And, you know, little details. You know, sometimes I do this type of I don't know what this is called, a review. But I should have did a little more research. I'm kind of doing this one off the cuff because this is the way I'm starting this video. And if I can remember correctly, you could even like start the key. And what a thrill. And you could drive around, and basically, if you wanted to, you could come across like a barn, a barn in a landscape there, and just blow it to smithereens. So, I mean, M1 Abrams was, you know, graphically, it's a very limited game. It's the kind of like 3D, I don't know if you'd even call it polygon. But it was along the lines of hard driving, those type of graphics. But I mean, you had a whole assortment of weapons. You could fire a tow missile, a Hellfire missile. You could fire your machine guns. You had smoke bombs that you could, you know, that you could fire off and then try to get out of a hairy situation. But I mean, M1 Abrams, that's a really, really cool game. I mean, it kind of reminds you almost of Grand Theft Auto in that, you know, you could do whatever you wanted to do. You could take the tank up a hill or something like that, and the tank had like a lumbering speed to it, which was alright. It was almost like kind of realistic. So, you know, that's a game that a lot of people I don't think know about and maybe overlook. But, I mean, I always found M1 Abrams to be a really, really fun game to play. The one thing I remember about growing up was going into electronics boutique, and you know, at the time, boy, what an exciting time if you think about it. You had the Super Nintendo games, you had the Sega Genesis games, and you had the TurboGrafx games all on sale at the same time. And you know, you think about that, it sounds like the golden years, but on the other side of the store were the PC games. And now, for guys like me that owned, you know, the TurboGrafx and the Sega Genesis, you just craved like a role-playing game, like a real hardcore role-playing game. and you would go over to the PC section of the store, and I mean, the role-playing games that stood out to me were like Ultima and Might and Magic. I remember sitting there staring at the Might and Magic boxes like, you know, it was such a mystery to me because I never had a computer in the house. It was way too expensive. But I'd look at the Might and Magic boxes, and you know, computer boxes were so big at the time, you'd look at the back, and there it was in all its color and glory. You'd say, oh my God, this is like the most incredible thing ever. And then it happened for the Sega Genesis. Might and Magic 3, Isles of Terror came out. And I can remember renting that game with my buddy VS, and in Might and Magic 3 was like, this was hardcore dungeon crawling role-playing game for the Sega Genesis. And you want to know the standout thing about the game? The music. I mean, the music was pure Sega Genesis, and it was rough, man. It was really rough. They were like, it was kind of had a medieval theme to it, and some of the music in that game, as rough as it is, it's just like burnt into my memory. And I love it. I absolutely love it. It's almost like you listen to the music and you say to yourself, what are the guys that programmed this music thinking? Like, maybe, were they joking around? Were they drinking? Were they on drugs? But anyway, or were they in a rush? But anyway, it was one of these games where you can control, you could have almost, I think it was like 7, maybe even 8 people on your squad. And you could build these characters, yet again, like Buck Rogers' Countdown to Doomsday, you can create these characters on a dice roll. And you would just like spend forever building this squad, and then you would go out and immediately get annihilated because the game was so hard right off the bat if you didn't know what you were doing. And, you know, there was all sorts of traps you can run into, so many enemies, a vast map, vast world. And the only drawback to this game, and for all role-playing games at the time, was, for me, animated spells. To me, for some reason, animated spells made a game. I mean, that's what made Phantasy Star 2 so great. That's what made Shining in the Darkness so great. These animated spells, something visual that you could see. That's the one thing Might and Magic 3 didn't have, and I think it was more, you know, text-based, the fighting, and I guess more theater of the mind. But I mean, that was like a really hardcore role-playing game for the Sega Genesis, and you know, it was made by New World Computing. And it had all the elements you could want in a role-playing game, you know, picking locks and gambling and, you know, and hidden places. I mean, the world was just, it was so vast. And that's something that, at the time, games just didn't have that type of vastness about them. They almost felt more confined. So these 16-bit role-playing games that were coming out were really, really exciting. And like I said, even like with Buck Rogers, it had this instruction manual that was like the size of a phone book, which of course you never read. But yeah, Might and Magic 3, Isles of Terror, very, very cool game for the Sega Genesis. But you know, make sure you don't have a girlfriend. And make sure you don't have a career, and make sure you don't actually have a life if you're going to sit down and play it, because you're going to devote some time to it. So, yeah, good thing I don't have any of those things. So, on to the next one. Okay. Alright, this might seem like a jip, but coming in at number 5 is Star Control. And I'm not going to get too far into Star Control because I've done a review of the game. If you want to check it out, it gets a little more in depth and whatnot. But Star Control is just one of the most underrated gems, I think, for the Sega Genesis. I mean, it's, just a game that's completely, I think, overlooked by everybody. It's a brilliant game. It's like intergalactic Street Fighter 2 with a campaign mode. I mean, the game goes much deeper than that. But intergalactic Star Control, put out by Ballistic, is just a very, very, very cool game. Let's move on.